Welcome back, survivors. I'm glad you could join us tonight. If you're enjoying these stories, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps keep the signal alive. And as always, drop a comment with your city or country. I love seeing where you're all listening from. Most people mock the idea of driving a minivan through the apocalypse, until I passed them on the side of the road, screaming behind broken glass or half-eaten in their lifted trucks. The irony always sat heavy in my chest. Soccer mom ride, murder dad upgrades. I didn't pick it for speed, didn't pick it for show. I picked it because it was the only thing left in my shop the day everything went to hell, and because my daughter used to love it. Still had the faded Hello Kitty sticker on the rear window, one I scratched off like it was winking at the end of the world. The day the outbreak hit, I was elbow deep in a transmission job, 02 Civic, nothing special. The shop radio was playing some bluesy riff I half remembered from my childhood. I thought it was just another flu scare, until Tyler, the new guy, came sprinting in from the lot with blood all over his shirt and a bite out of his neck the size of a softball. He died 20 minutes later, woke up 3 minutes after that. I didn't save him. I saved my tools, and the minivan. Took me 3 weeks to get it fully fortified. Stripped the interior down to the frame. Replaced the doors with 16-gauge steel plates from the old lift station. Welded them tight. Reinforced the bumpers. Built a cattle guard out of reclaimed rebar and scrap fencing. Wired the headlights to switch into blackout mode. Bolted a rooftop luggage carrier for emergency fuel and food. Wrapped it all in mesh netting. Coated it in mud. It looked like hell. Drove like salvation. First few months, I stuck to the outer rings of towns, coasting the highways, scavenging rest stops and car dealerships. I avoided the cities. Too many echoes. Too many shadows. Too many memories of places I used to go with them. My wife's name was Melissa. My daughter, Zoe. I never got to say goodbye. The van was all I had left that ever knew them. The back seats still smelled like cherry lip gloss and juice box sugar. Sometimes I'd catch a whiff, and it'd feel like someone stabbed me behind the ribs with a warm knife. I didn't cry. Not anymore. Crying wastes water. It was mid-September when I found the old overpass blockade. A pileup of burnt-out sedans, cargo trucks, and corpses turned to leather in the sun. I could have turned back, but I needed the fuel. I knew truck stops were running dry, and this convoy had clearly been military. Where there's military, there's gear. And blood. Lots of it. I parked the van half a mile back in the trees, killed the lights, grabbed my crowbar, and slipped down the embankment. Took me 20 minutes to scale the twisted wrecks. Picked my way through shattered windshields and blood-crusted crates. Found a medkit, 2 magazines of 9mm, half a pack of peanut butter crackers. Scored a jug of diesel in the back of an overturned Humvee. Was just about to head back when I heard the scream. Short. High. Ragged. Kid. I froze. Could have walked away. Should have probably. But I didn't. Not because I'm a hero, but because I remember what it sounded like the last time Zoe screamed. And I remember how long it took for the silence to come after. I moved fast, low and quiet. Slid between the crushed sedans and ducked beneath a collapsed trailer. Found her by a flipped ambulance. Couldn't have been more than 17. Tangled in a stretcher strap, one leg bleeding, a pair of infected clawing at the side door like angry dogs. She saw me, eyes wide, mouth shaking. Didn't beg. Just looked. I acted before I thought. Crowbar to the first skull. Boot to the second. Took a bite to my pant leg, nothing deep. Ripped the thing off the bumper and crushed it under the ambulance tire. 1, 2, 3. Head cracked open like a melon. The girl didn't move. Just stared. So I picked her up, slung her over my shoulder, and ran like hell. We got back to the van 5 minutes later. Heart thudding like a war drum. I tossed her inside, slammed the reinforced door, gunned the engine. She flinched at the sound. I didn't talk for a long time. Neither did she. When we were 20 miles down the highway, and the sun was bleeding into the clouds, I finally spoke. You got a name? She hesitated. Then, Lacey. Got bit. She shook her head. Good. I didn't ask anything else. Didn't need to. I've seen enough loss to know when someone's running from it. We made camp behind an abandoned tractor supply store that night, tarped the windows, rigged a noise alarm with a tin can and wire. I gave her half a granola bar and a bottle of water. She took it, but barely ate. Just sat in the back seat, knees up, staring at nothing. I sat in the driver's seat, watching the road through the cracked windshield. Somewhere out there, something was always moving. "You got kids?" she asked sometime after midnight. I didn't answer right away. "Had." She didn't say sorry. I appreciated that. "You built all this yourself?" she asked, nodding toward the reinforced frame, the makeshift lockbox, the ceiling fan wired to a solar cell. "Yup. You some kind of survivalist?" I snorted. "I'm a mechanic." She gave a small smile. First one I'd seen. I offered her a blanket. She took it. We didn't speak again until morning. But when we hit the road, she moved to the front seat without asking. I didn't stop her. The truth is, I don't trust anyone. But I still remember what it feels like to be trusted, and the look in her eyes when I pulled her from that wreck. That wasn't the look of someone who wanted saving. That was someone willing to fight, if someone just gave her a damn chance. So now it's the two of us. A grizzled old mechanic with a haunted past, and a kid with nothing left but a name. And the van, it's still rolling, still holding, still hungry for the road. I used to know every highway in the state by heart. Not the names, but the feel of them. The way old tires hummed different on cracked concrete. The smell when you passed a paper mill. The kind of towns that only had one gas station and two churches. Before the world fell apart, that kind of knowledge was just local trivia. Now it keeps you alive. Mile marker 66 sat at the edge of one of those nowhere towns. Just a lopsided sign half swallowed by weeds and bullet holes. Lacey didn't ask why I slowed down when we got near it. Maybe she felt it too, that gut-tightening tension that came from years of watching the road like it might bite. This stretch of highway had a reputation, even before the outbreak. We rolled past the marker just after noon. The sun was punishing, beating down through the cracked windshield like it had a grudge. The AC system hadn't worked in months, but I kept the fan running off the solar rig. Lacey had her window cracked, feet on the dash, a pair of old aviators on that didn't belong to her. "Town up ahead?" she asked. "Sort of," I said. "Used to be a tourist stop. Nothing much now." She glanced at the fuel gauge. "We're at a quarter. Enough to keep going." She didn't argue, but she didn't relax either. Good. We spotted the other vehicle 5 miles later, burned out on the shoulder, long dead. Looked like a Jeep. Bullet holes in the doors. Hood popped open. No movement around it. No smell. No birds. No flies. Something about it sat wrong. I pulled over 100 yards up, behind a rise in the road. "You staying in or coming?" I asked her. She checked the crowbar at her hip and the knife tucked into her boot. "Coming." She was getting faster. Not just with gear, but with decisions. I didn't hate that. We approached low, crouched between overgrown brush and the rusty guardrail. The Jeep was empty, doors open, blood dried to black flakes on the driver's seat. There was a trail of something, mud or more blood, leading into the woods on the right. "Trap?" she whispered. I nodded once. Didn't mean it was a smart one. Just that someone else had been here recently. And people were always worse than the dead. We backed away slow. Didn't talk until we were back behind the wheel. "Weird thing is," Lacey said, "there's not even drag marks. Whoever left that Jeep, they walked away." I drummed fingers on the wheel. "Or were let go." She looked at me. "Like bait." I didn't answer. Didn't need to. We reached the town around 3 p.m., what was left of it. One blinking stoplight. A gas station half swallowed by vines. The faded skeleton of a motel. And behind all that, looming over everything like a rusted crown, an old grain silo. "You know this place?" she asked. "I know that the gas station's got an underground tank," I said. "Might still be tapped." "And the silo?" "Not sure. It wasn't open to the public." She stared out the window. "Feels like it's watching us." I didn't say it, but I agreed. We parked behind the gas station. The van's reinforced panels blended into the brick wall like part of it. I handed Lacey the short-range radio. "If we get separated, channel 3. Don't yell unless you have to. And don't fire unless you're sure." She nodded. "Got it." We moved like shadows, checked the store first. Looted, but not recently. Shelves picked clean except for a dusty box of protein bars and some expired baby formula. Back room had been used as a sleeping spot, blankets, wrappers, a few empty shotgun shells. No bodies. Just ghosts. We found the entrance to the underground tank behind the building, hidden under a panel of cracked concrete and weeds. I jimmied it open with a crowbar and dropped down into the dark. Lacey stayed topside. "I see movement," she said through the radio. "North side. By the silo." My pulse picked up. Human or dead? Too far to tell. But they're walking slow. "Hold position." I siphoned a few gallons into the backup tank, enough to buy us another 100 miles if needed. Climbed out and sealed the hatch. By the time I looked up, Lacey was gone. I heard the radio crackle. "In the grain silo," she said. "I saw them go inside." "Why follow?" I snapped. "Because they were limping." That stopped me. In this world, anything limping usually ends up dead. Or already is. But she hadn't gone in blind. She was smarter than that. I crossed the street fast and low, rebar batten in one hand, pistol holstered at the thigh. The silo doors were cracked. Inside, darkness. And then, a voice. "Don't shoot." I stopped cold. Male. Mid-30s. Not panicked, but not confident either. Lacey appeared in the corner, crowbar up, eyes darting. "He's not infected," she said. The man stood with hands raised. Pale. Dirt-smeared. One eye swollen shut. His jacket was a biker cut, patch torn off. "No weapons in sight." "Name's Marlowe," he said. "Wasn't looking for a fight." "Then what were you looking for?" I asked. He glanced at Lacey, then back to me. "Shelter. Food. I got run off by a group 2 days ago. They stripped my bike. Left me to walk." Lacey shifted. "I saw 2 others with you." Marlowe stiffened. "Not anymore. We didn't trust him. But we didn't kill him either. We gave him half a bottle of water and sent him on his way, northbound." Lacey watched him disappear past the broken traffic light. "Think he'll make it?" she asked. "Not my job to wonder," I said. "Only to survive." She looked at the van. Then at me. "You ever gonna tell me what happened to them?" I knew what she meant. Melissa. Zoe. The ones I couldn't save. "Not yet," I said. She nodded. Didn't ask again. We rolled out past sunset. The road was quiet. The sky was a bruised purple. At mile marker 66, I glanced in the rear view. Still there. Still broken. Still waiting for someone to let their guard down. We didn't. And we didn't stop again until we ran out of radio stations. 3 days later, we saw the first RV, parked sideways across a collapsed bridge like a blockade, engine dead, tires shredded, spray-painted words scrawled across the side in dried red. "No more room. Turn back." But that wasn't the part that made my knuckles go white on the steering wheel. It was the shape in the window, gray-skinned, dried blood around the jaw, tapping one hand against the glass like it was just waiting its turn to get out. I swerved the van around the wreckage, avoiding the thing's dead gaze, and we pushed on, further down the cracked mountain road. That night, we saw the firelight first, flickering like a mirage beyond the tree line. Lacey spotted the glow before I did. She leaned forward, peering through the windshield like someone trying to read a half-remembered warning. "You think it's survivors?" she asked. "If it's not, we're in trouble. And if it is?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I pulled the van onto a gravel turnout, killed the engine, and grabbed the binoculars from the dash. Through the trees, I saw them, 4 RVs, 3 panel vans, a school bus with the windows welded shut and steel bars covering the doors. The whole convoy circled like wagons around a bonfire. Figures moved in and out of the light, too many to count. Some sat on lawn chairs, smoking or drinking from metal cups. Others sharpened blades, cleaned guns, or paced with their heads down like dogs waiting to snap. There was music playing, something warped and old, echoing through the dusk like a record spinning in a dream. "They've got a perimeter," I said. "Watchtowers, solar panels, tripwires." Lacey frowned. "Think they'll let us in?" "They're too fortified for no reason. Either they're scared, or they're dangerous." I nodded. We waited, watched, listened. And when one of the scouts wandered too far into the woods, I made my call. We crept up in silence, flanking the lone sentry as he stepped over a fallen log, muttering to himself. He wasn't old, 20s maybe, but his face had that ragged, hollow look. A shotgun hung loose over one shoulder. I motioned to Lacey to stay low. Then I stood up and stepped into his path. He spun, gun halfway up. I raised both hands. Not infected. He hesitated. You alone? He asked. No, but we're not looking for trouble. Just shelter for the night. Food trade. He looked me up and down, then at the van parked in the shadows behind me. What is that? He asked. Home. They let us into the circle just after midnight. A woman named Harper met us at the gate. Tight ponytail, scar over her right eye, voice like sandpaper and cigarettes. She ran the convoy with a quiet authority that didn't ask for permission. We don't take in strays long, she said. You got something to offer? I nodded toward the van. I can fix anything. Rig power. Reinforce armor. Wire security. You name it. She studied me, then Lacey, who stood silent beside me with her crowbar resting casually across her back. You? Harper asked her. I watch your back while he works, Lacey said. Something in that made Harper smile. They gave us space near the back of the circle. Not inside one of the RVs, just a patch of asphalt and a crate to sit on. We didn't complain. I pulled out my tool kit and started helping one of the guys patch a coolant leak in their generator. While I worked, I listened. People were tense. They weren't just surviving, they were circling the drain. They'd lost 6 in the last week to a walker herd on the highway. Supplies were dwindling. Morale was worse. And their safe zone plan? Already failed twice. That night, Harper invited me to sit with the council. 4 of them around a rusted fire pit, passing a dented thermos of what they claimed was whiskey. We're moving west, she said. Old Ranger Station up in the hills. Got fuel, fences, radio tower. We need help getting the vehicles through the terrain. I nodded. Can probably upgrade a few of your rigs, but you'll lose 2 of them if the slope's too steep. She watched me carefully. You've done this before? Not exactly, I said, but I know machines, and I know survival. She raised the thermos to me. Then you're useful. I didn't drink. Didn't trust them that far. Lacey came back to the van later, silent. She had blood on her boots. What happened? I asked. She sat down in the passenger seat and stared out the cracked windshield. One of the kids in the bus had a fever. The others were scared he'd turn. They argued. One of them didn't wait. She didn't have to say more. I put a hand on her shoulder. She didn't shrug it off. Next morning, the convoy started prepping to roll. I helped reinforce the lead RV suspension, fixed a jammed rifle bolt for one of the sentries, even installed a CB relay in the bus. They treated me like a miracle. Lacey like a ghost. I didn't like that. People like Harper only smiled when they wanted something. And they wanted something. We were set to leave at dawn when I saw it. The back of the last RV. The one they'd kept locked the whole time. Doors slightly ajar. Chains hanging loose. And a trail of blood, fresh, leading toward the woods. Lacey followed my gaze. Something got out? She asked. Or something got in? We walked over together. I opened the doors. Inside was a cage. Bent. Broken. And empty. We left before first light. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't explain. Harper called after us once. Then didn't bother again. They had their secrets. We had our wheels. And the road. It was waiting. The map was an old truck stop pamphlet. Faded, greasy, edges curled from sun and sweat. It wasn't much, but it showed every depot along the interstate, and that was enough. We were running low on diesel again, and the next town listed a riverside freight yard, just outside the industrial zone. Sounded promising. Most depots like that were gold mines, generators, tools, fuel drums, and sometimes even vending machines the looters hadn't cracked yet. The only catch. They were usually crawling with the kind of dead that didn't shamble. The ones that waited. The ones that listened. We got there by early afternoon. The sky was gray, that dull metal shade that made the world feel empty and too quiet. The freight yard was surrounded by razor wire fencing. Part of it collapsed on the south side. Rusted shipping containers sat in crooked rows like tombstones, half covered in vines and filth. There was a faint smell of rot in the air, not fresh, but not old either. I don't like this, Lacey said. You're not supposed to, I told her. I parked the van a block back behind a burned-out food truck, and we made our way in on foot, crowbar and baton in hand. No guns unless necessary. Noise was death. The first row of containers was empty. A few busted crates. Flies. Rat droppings. A bird carcass with no eyes. I marked the way with chalk, same as always. Forward only if it's worth it. We moved slowly, ears tuned to every sound, the flap of a tarp, the distant creak of metal, the occasional drip of something wet onto something worse. We rounded the third row, and stopped cold. There it was, the bone pile, a mound of corpses stacked like junk tires, at least a dozen, probably more. Some dressed in military gear, others in civilian rags, all stripped of weapons and gear. Heads caved in, throats torn out, but none of them looked decomposed. They're recent, Lacey said quietly. I nodded. Something, or someone, had made this. Collected it. That's not something the dead do. That's something people do. Or something worse. We heard the growl before we saw the shape. A low, wet snarl, followed by the metallic clatter of chains. We ducked behind a container. I peeked around the corner. There was a walker, but it wasn't like the others. It was chained to a metal stake, its jaw wrapped in wire, its hands cut off. Someone had dressed it in scraps of armor and painted symbols across its face in what looked like oil and blood. It wasn't moving like a prisoner. It was standing guard. Cult? Lacey whispered. Maybe, I said. Maybe worse. She looked at me. What's worse than a cult? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know, and I didn't want to guess wrong. We could have turned back. We should have turned back. But I needed fuel. And if someone had gone to the trouble of using a walker as an alarm dog, it meant there was something here worth protecting. I motioned for Lacey to stay behind me. We skirted wide, keeping to the shadows, passing more crates and broken pallets until we reached the depot's main building. The overhead doors were cracked open, just wide enough to slip through. Inside, silence, and the cold smell of metal and blood. We stepped through. The space was huge, an old sorting center filled with half-unloaded cargo trucks and rusted shelving. A few forklifts sat tipped over like sleeping beasts. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, some still working off emergency solar backups. And in the far corner, jackpot. 3 steel drums marked diesel reserve. One was half full. The other 2 were bone dry. Still, it was enough. Lacey began filling our emergency jugs. I kept watch, eyes on the high catwalks and the doorways above. That's when I saw them. 2 shapes, human, crouched on the walkway overhead. Not walkers. Too still. Too aware. I motioned to Lacey to stop. She froze. But it was too late. The taller one raised something, not a weapon, but a horn, and blew. The sound was low, strange, like a broken didgeridoo soaked in static. And from somewhere deep inside the depot, the real noise began. Chains snapping, crates tumbling, snarls, laughter, and then movement. Not just one walker, but dozens. Some were normal, half-rotted, dumb and clumsy. But others wore armor made of bones and scrap metal, their faces hidden behind carved wooden masks, as if whatever had started this place wasn't done trying to shape the dead into something worse. I grabbed the nearest wrench and swung hard, dropped the first one that lunged. Lacey smashed another skull with a steel pipe, her face pale but focused. We fought our way to the side exit, barely slipped through before the mob hit. The door slammed shut behind us, and I bolted the latch just in time. Back at the van, we loaded the jugs in silence. I started the engine. Didn't speak until we were 5 miles away. What the hell was that? Lacey finally said. A nest, I replied. A training ground. For what? For something new. She looked out the window quiet, then said they were organized. Yeah. She clenched her jaw. We should have burned it. We will. Next time. We didn't sleep that night. Parked the van in a gully off the road, ran a silent perimeter alarm, and stayed inside. Lacey curled up in the back seat, crowbar across her chest. I sat in the driver's seat, staring at the stars through the cracked windshield. Somewhere out there, someone was trying to build an army out of the dead. And my guess? They weren't done yet. We didn't stop for 2 straight days. Didn't sleep, didn't talk much either. The freight yard had shaken something loose in both of us, not just fear, but the kind of dread that sinks deep, like rust in your bones. I'd seen plenty of horrors since 0 Day, but nothing like that nest, nothing that felt built. Lacey spent most of the ride with her knees up in the passenger seat, flipping through one of Zoe's old comic books. Issue number 3 of something about space cops and laser swords. She didn't ask whose it was. She knew. That was why she didn't say anything when I kept glancing at it. There's something about memory that makes the road feel heavier. We'd been following the emergency route signs, those blue and white markers meant for hurricanes and tornado evacuations. Figured they'd lead us somewhere high ground, maybe even another false promise of a safe zone. But the real reason I kept following them, I needed a goal. Didn't matter if it was a lie, just mattered that the wheels kept turning. Night fell fast the third day. Clouds thick like a blackout curtain pulled across the sky. No moon. No stars. Just our headlights cutting through the dark like twin daggers. Fuel was low again. The backup tank was almost dry. We hadn't eaten since morning. Half a protein bar each, and a few sips of canned soup that tasted like regret. Somewhere around mile marker 219, the van sputtered. I tapped the dash, whispered to it like an old friend. "Come on, baby, just a little further." It coughed, then caught again. Lacey raised her eyebrows. "You naming it now?" "Only thing that listens to me," I said. She smirked, just barely, but it was there. We crested a hill and saw light. Actual light, not a fire or flares, but warm, yellow-white glow spilling from a string of hanging bulbs stretched between telephone poles like a ghost of Christmas past. "Could be a trap," she said. "Could be a break." We slowed, killed the lights, rolled forward silent. The lights outlined a campground, rusted RVs and old trailers parked in a crescent around a fire pit. But what caught my eye wasn't the makeshift cabins or the overturned picnic tables. It was the generator. Big. Gas-fed. Still humming. Whoever was running this place still had juice. And that meant one thing. They had fuel. We parked on the outer edge of the tree line and scouted on foot. No movement. No voices. And no smell. "Too quiet," Lacey said. She was right. Places like this were either alive with sound or deathly still. This was the kind of still that comes after a fight. We moved in tight formation, back to back as we approached the generator. That's when we saw the bodies. 4 of them, 2 adults, 2 teenagers, huddled inside a gutted RV. No bites. No broken limbs. Just peaceful. Like they laid down and never got back up. Carbon monoxide? I guessed. Or they gave up. We took the gas, didn't feel good about it, but didn't leave it behind either. While I funneled it into the van, Lacey climbed into one of the tree stands nearby, checking the road behind us with binoculars. She didn't like what she saw. "Something's coming." "How many?" She didn't answer right away. "Enough to call it a herd." I looked back toward the campground, then toward the dark highway. Nowhere safe. No fences. No fallback. But the van had gas again. And that meant only one choice. We piled in and hit the road hard, tires screaming, then lurching forward like a warhorse on its last breath. Behind us, the herd broke from the trees, 50 strong, some fresh, others skeletons with hate still in their sockets. They moved faster than they should have. Faster than the last time. They were learning. Or someone was teaching them. "Where's the map?" I asked, gripping the wheel. Lacey scrambled to grab it from the glove box, spread it over her lap. "There's a tunnel up ahead, 3 miles. "Is it clear?" She didn't answer. That was enough. We pushed the engine harder, dashboard lights flickering, suspension groaning under the weight of the armor and supplies. One of the side mirrors clipped a mile marker sign, snapped off. Didn't stop. Couldn't. The tunnel loomed ahead, an old freight pass under a ridge, maybe 50 yards wide, lined with rusted street lamps that hadn't worked since the world ended. We hit the brakes just enough to swerve around a flipped SUV at the entrance, scraped the side panel, but kept going. Inside, it was black as sin, headlights barely reaching 20 feet. "Flare!" I shouted. Lacey cracked one and threw it forward. Its red glow lit the walls like a warning. And in that light we saw them. A blockade. Not walkers. Not people. Just cars, dozens of them, parked nose to nose, steel and rubber and glass welded into a makeshift dam. "Reverse?" she asked. "No time." I pulled the handbrake, spun the wheel, cranked the secondary ignition. The minivan's undercarriage lit up. That wasn't a stock feature. I'd installed a small flamethrower rig 6 months back, meant for emergencies. This qualified. With one hand on the gas and the other on the trigger, I sent a wave of fire over the blockade, melting glass, igniting rubber, turning the blockade into a screaming furnace. It wouldn't last, but it didn't have to, just long enough. I dropped it into gear and slammed the pedal down. We hit the edge of the blockade at 40, bounced, skidded, something cracked underneath, and then we were through. Metal screamed. The rear door crumpled. But the van kept moving, and we didn't stop until the sun started bleeding through the trees again. We pulled off the road and parked behind an old ranger station. Nothing but ashes and stone left standing. The van hissed and groaned like it had just survived a war. So had we. Lacey got out, collapsed onto the grass, and looked up at the sky. We made it. I checked the fuel line. Barely. She sat up, brushing sweat and soot from her face. That flamethrower thing was insane. Desperate. She looked at me, then at the van, and smiled. You really did turn this into a fortress. I nodded. Yeah, but it ain't bulletproof. She stood, stretched, then said, Good thing we're still driving. The van started making that sound again, an ugly rattle deep in the engine block, like something had come loose inside the bones. I knew that sound. It wasn't just wear. It was warning. The kind that comes right before the world goes dark. I didn't tell Lacey at first. She was asleep in the back seat, curled against the wheel well, her crowbar resting on a comic book she read at least a dozen times already. Her boots were still on. She never slept without them anymore. Smart kid. We were parked outside the ruins of an old fast food joint. Rooftop sign cracked in half, deep fryer flipped in the dining room, cash register full of melted quarters. But there was a parking canopy. There was a view of the main road. There were 2 exits. That's the best you could ask for these days. I popped the hood and stared at the engine. It was a Frankenstein rig, half Nissan, half salvaged Humvee, held together with scrap wire and willpower. I'd reinforced it with welded rebar and a scavenged aircraft oil cooler, but even monsters break down eventually. This beast had carried us over 2,000 miles of hell, and now it was bleeding from the inside. The oil was black sludge. The radiator hissed like an angry snake. The belts looked ready to snap. I could fix some of it, maybe get another 100 miles, 200 if I stripped parts from the next dead truck we found. But the truth was, she didn't have long. Not this time. You're lying to her, a voice said behind me. I didn't flinch, just kept tightening the bolts on the intake manifold. She's a kid. She deserves better than false hope. It was Lacey. I didn't turn around. I'm giving her direction, I said. You're giving her denial. She walked up beside me, arms crossed, face hard in the early sun. Be straight with me, Ray. How bad? I tightened the last bolt, wiped my hands on a rag. We're almost out of coolant. Fan belt's frayed. Alternator's dying. She won't make another 2 fights. Lacey didn't blink. So what's the plan? Make her last just long enough to matter. She didn't argue. That's what told me she understood. The kind of understanding that comes when someone you rely on is dying, and there's nothing you can do about it but keep moving anyway. We sat on the hood for a while, passing a dented can of coffee back and forth. It tasted like rust and ash, but it was warm. The radio crackled sometime around noon. Not the CB. This was the Oldham set I'd hardwired into the dashboard. It hadn't picked up a thing in weeks. Now suddenly static, then a voice. A man's voice. Repeat, if anyone hears this, Fallon Ridge is compromised. Evacuation in progress, code 6. Then silence. Lacey looked at me. Fallon Ridge? That's 3 hours north, right? I nodded. Used to be a fire station. National Guard took it over a year ago. You think it's real? Doesn't matter. If they've got gear, I need it. If they've got parts, the van needs it. And if it's a trap? I looked at the highway, then at the busted engine. Then we make it count. We were on the road by 2. The van stuttered on the inclines, but held steady. I'd rebalanced the suspension and rerouted the coolant line with old copper tubing from the fryer at the restaurant. Not pretty, but better than nothing. Lacey rode shotgun, crossbow across her lap, now instead of the crowbar. She'd upgraded 2 days ago after scavenging it off a dead hunter. She was getting too good with it. That scared me more than anything. The closer we got to Fallon Ridge, the more signs we saw. Scorch marks, spent shell casings, abandoned outposts with red spray-painted Code 6 on the walls. "You ever figure out what Code 6 means?" she asked. "Yeah. What is it?" I stared straight ahead. "Don't expect backup." Fallon Ridge looked like a war zone. The fire station had been turned into a fortress, barriers stacked 3 layers high, sandbags spilling into the street, floodlights mounted on old fire truck ladders. And every body outside the walls wore military gear. Bodies, not people. They were slumped against the barricades, heads open, flies swarming. Dozens of them. No survivors. No sentries. Just silence. We pulled up cautiously, headlights off, watching every window. "I'll go in alone," I said. "You stay here." Engine running. "No chance. You're faster. You're smarter." We didn't argue more than that. We both went in. The inside of the station was a maze of overturned tables, shattered radios, old MRE wrappers, and shell-pocked walls. Whatever happened here, it ended fast and ugly. Gunfire. Panic. No cleanup. But they left the garage untouched. For Humvees. 1 deuce-and-a-half truck. All stripped, but not completely. They also left an oil rack. 2 jugs of synthetic. And a belt that could maybe be refitted with enough torque. I grabbed everything I could carry, handed Lacey the wire cutters, and got to work. We were there for maybe an hour when we heard the screaming. Not from outside, but from inside. The sublevel. Fallon Ridge had a basement. Of course it did. "Don't," Lacey said. I didn't answer. I grabbed a flare and descended the stairs. It was a containment area, small cells with reinforced doors. Emergency lockdown lights blinked red in slow pulses. The air was thick with rot and disinfectant. The screaming stopped when I reached the last cell. The door was welded shut. And behind it, someone moved. Not a walker. A man. Alive. Eyes wild. Face half-burned. He saw me and smiled. "You're too late," he said. Then he started laughing. I backed away slowly, closed the stairwell door behind me, and welded it shut. I didn't tell Lacey what I saw. Just handed her the oil and the belt and said, "Let's get moving." She didn't ask. She could see it on my face. Some things don't need explaining. We changed the oil on the side of the road under moonlight, me under the chassis, her handing me tools, both of us covered in grease and questions. The van would run. Not forever. Not far. But enough. Enough to finish this stretch of road. And maybe, just maybe, make it to the next one. The morning sky looked like a bruise, thick with purple clouds, sun trying to push through but failing. The kind of sky that makes you feel like the world knows something you don't. I twisted the ignition, and the van rumbled to life, slower this time. Less confident. The engine was running, but something in the rhythm had changed. Like a heartbeat stuttering. The check engine light came on just as we hit the highway. It stayed on the whole time. We were less than 100 miles from the broadcast tower Lacey picked up 3 nights ago. She didn't talk about it much, but I caught her staring at the coordinates she scribbled on the inside of an old cereal box, folded up and tucked into the glove compartment. "Still think it's real?" I asked, tapping the dash. She shrugged, eyes forward. Still hoping. Hope was dangerous. I didn't like how much of it she had. But I wasn't about to take it from her. The van had started pulling left. The alignment was off from the blockade crash in the tunnel. I hadn't had time to reset it, and we were running out of road. Lacey reached over, opened the glove box, and pulled out a tiny toy, an old Hot Wheels minivan with flames painted on the side. I'd given it to her weeks ago, right after we escaped that trapped subway station. She said it looked like our ride. I said it was faster. She set it on the dashboard gently, facing forward. "If we don't make it," she said, "I want this to keep going." I didn't answer. The roads got worse. Potholes deep enough to snap an axle, overgrowth forcing us into zigzag detours. We passed more wrecks, twisted sedans, shredded campers. Once even a burned-out ambulance turned completely on its side like it had flipped mid-scream. At one point we drove under an overpass and found a message spray-painted across the concrete in foot-high letters. "You're already dead, just don't know it yet." I didn't point it out. She saw it. But she didn't flinch. That girl had more steel in her than most grown men. By dusk we'd made it to the outskirts of a town that used to be called Red Pine, just a scatter of buildings and strip malls clinging to the edge of the hills. We stopped in front of what used to be a tire shop, pushed open the bay door manually, and rolled the van inside. I killed the engine. The light blinked once, then died. I looked at Lacey. That was the alternator. She didn't have to ask what that meant. I opened the hood and stared at the engine again. Steam hissing, wires frayed, belts glazed with heat stress. She came up beside me quiet. "We need to find a new vehicle," I said. She looked at the van, then at me. "We won't outrun anything on foot." "I know, and you can't rig another one in time." "I know that too." She took a breath, then said something I wasn't expecting. "Then I'll drive." I laughed. I couldn't help it. Not mocking. Just surprised. "You don't know the systems," I said. "You've never hotwired. Never handled the balance on roads like this. You can't." "I can learn." The look in her eyes told me this wasn't about ego. It was about legacy. She knew this ride was ending. She wanted to be ready for whatever came next. That night we went over everything: controls, wiring, backup fuel switches, how to reset the electrical fuse under the dash using a flattened paperclip. She listened like it was gospel. We slept inside the van, doors locked, weapons loaded, the check engine light still glowing faintly like a dying candle. In the middle of the night, I woke up to find her in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, eyes closed, whispering to herself. Not a prayer. A checklist. She was rehearsing. The next morning the sky was clear. No clouds, just cold sun and a wind that cut through the valley like a blade. We were 5 miles from the tower. We didn't stop for breakfast. Didn't say much. The van groaned the whole way, gears slipping, power steering resisting like it was fighting us every inch. When we hit the ridge and finally saw the tower, the real one, not a mirage or false signal, something in me broke open. It was still standing. Antennas intact. Solar panels glinting. There was even a flag waving from the upper rail, yellow and black. A distress signal. Someone was alive. Then we heard the noise. Not from the tower. From behind us. Dozens of engines. Motorcycles. A semi. Off-road vehicles rigged for war. The Bonpile cult, or whatever was left of it, had found us. And they brought hell with them. I looked at Lacey. She looked at me. And then she slid into the driver's seat without a word. The girl who once curled up in the back of the van and cried herself to sleep now held the wheel like it was her birthright. "Tell me what to do," she said. "You already know." I climbed into the passenger seat and readied the rig, defense mode, spike traps, rear oil slick system. She took a deep breath and floored it. The van bucked, whined, screamed, but it moved. She weaved between debris and fallen signs like she'd been born on back roads, ducking through fences, hopping curbs, tilting the van on 2 wheels just long enough to slide between a crumbling guardrail and an overturned bus. I was holding on with both hands and still smiling like a fool. Because she was perfect. Because the van was dying. And we were both holding on with everything we had. We reached the base of the tower just as the cult's lead truck crested the hill behind us. I jumped out, hit the ignition on the oil trap, and sent a wave of burning slick across the road. 2 bikes slid, spun out, one exploded. The rest kept coming. Lacey turned to me. "You going up?" "Not yet." She handed me the toy van. And then she said, "I'll buy you time." The last thing she said to me was, "I'll buy you time," like it was just another favor, like she was asking if I wanted anything from the store, like it didn't matter she was about to drive head-on into a swarm of death on 4 wheels with a machine that should have died 3 states ago. And then she slammed the door shut and floored it. The minivan, my minivan, roared like a dragon and took off back down the hill, its panels dented, its engine coughing blood, but still moving, still fierce. And I stood there in the dirt at the base of that radio tower, watching the only person I'd let matter in years vanish in a cloud of smoke and gravel. And I knew, right then, what it meant to give someone a future, even if you weren't part of it. The cult convoy met her halfway down the slope. The lead truck tried to cut her off, but she clipped the front axle and sent it spinning into the ditch. Motorcycles closed in, 2 on the left, 1 on the right. She hit the brakes, let them pass, then swerved and sideswiped one straight into the other. Their bikes crashed in a tangle of fire and steel. And the van kept going. I could hear the horn, one long blast, a scream into the void. The oil slick rig fired once, then sputtered, out of juice. She threw the van sideways, skidded into a jackknife, barrel rolled one last cult car into a telephone pole. I could almost hear the damn thing laugh. And then the semi came, bigger than anything else in the convoy. Rammed into the van from the side, lifted it off the ground, pinned it against the cliff wall. Everything exploded in a bloom of smoke, glass, fire. And still, somehow, she crawled out the passenger side. Limping, bleeding, but alive. She raised the crossbow. Fired once. The semi's driver dropped. Then she looked up at me. All that distance between us. Just long enough to mouth something I couldn't hear. Then the rest of them came. Too many. She ran. I ran down the tower steps, screaming her name. But I never saw her fall. Just the smoke. Just the silence. The cult didn't follow me to the tower. Maybe they thought I'd die with the van. Maybe they were scared of what was inside the place. Or maybe, for the first time, they lost more than they wanted to pay. But they disappeared into the hills. And I was left standing in the dust, holding that little toy van in my hand, wondering how the hell I was still breathing. The radio tower was still functional. Took me 2 days to fix the power cells. Had to scavenge from the wrecked solar panels and rear out the circuits using leftover copper I found in the old emergency shelter out back. But eventually, I got it working. Broadcasted once. Didn't say my name. Didn't say hers. Just gave coordinates. Said there was safety here. Said we could build something. Not a cure. Not a new world. Just a place to rest. I still have the minivan's key. Bent, scorched, half-melted. I wear it on a wire around my neck. Some nights, I sit on the tower roof and trace the grooves in it. Pretend I'm back under that hood, covered in grease and swearing at stripped bolts. Pretend she's still in the passenger seat, feet on the dash, reading comics out loud like they were gospel. Pretend we're still on the move. Someone showed up 2 weeks later. Young couple, ex-medics from Denver, scared but smart. I showed them the fuel cache behind the hill, taught them how to clean the filters on the wind turbines. They asked what happened to the van. I told them. It got us here. That was enough. The safe zone never came. No convoys, no aircraft, no flags. But we made something anyway. 3 people. Then 5. Then 10. We put up lights. We built fences. We planted potatoes in raised beds made from engine hoods and broken pallet wood. It's ugly, but it holds. Sometimes I catch myself glancing at the old road, waiting to see her walk up over the ridge. Like maybe she found a way out. Maybe the van took one last breath and carried her somewhere I can't reach. But I know, deep down, she gave everything to get me here. And I have to make that matter. The world's still broken. The dead still roam. But now, when people arrive, I tell them the story. Not about the fall. Not about the loss. But about a minivan. Built by a mechanic. Driven by a kid who never should have survived. But did. Long enough to save someone who thought he didn't deserve saving. I don't know what comes next. But I know what got us this far. Steel. Grease. Fire. And heart.